For years, the gods of Asgard lived peacefully, their golden city floating directly above the plains of Broxton, Oklahoma. But Norman Osborn, a former Green Goblin now masquerading as America's top cop, sees them as the final obstacle to his absolute control. With the Dark Avengers at his back and a master manipulator whispering in his ear, Osborn is about to commit the ultimate act of hubris, a full-scale, devastating siege on the realm eternal. Welcome to Section 6. Subscribe if you love comics. Loki approaches Norman Osborn, pointing out the Asgardian warrior Volstagg as the perfect pawn for their grand design. Volstagg is wandering Earth looking for an adventure, and Loki suggests that Osborn can use the warrior to manufacture a catastrophic incident. This tragedy would provide Osborn with the ultimate political excuse to forcefully remove Asgard from the mortal world. The trap is sprung on the streets of Chicago. Volstagg intervenes in a high-speed police chase, wrecking a fleeing criminal's vehicle with a massive swing of his sword. As the local police try to rein in the chaos, Osborn's hired mercenaries, a villainous squad called the UFOs, launch a surprise attack. They blast the Asgardian directly into the crowded stands of Soldier Field, triggering a devastating explosion that completely levels the stadium. When the smoke clears, Volstagg stands alone amidst the total destruction, exactly as Loki planned. With images of the disaster broadcast across the world, Osborn finally has his justification. He immediately bypasses the President of the United States entirely and issues a chilling command to his second-in-command, Victoria Hand. To pull off an attack against gods, Osborn needs heavy hitters. He recruits Ares, the god of war, by feeding him a massive lie. Osborn claims Loki has violently taken control of Asgard and they must intervene to free it. Ares agrees to lead the charge but promises to cut Osborn's head off if he is being deceived. Finally, Osborn turns to his Dark Avengers, a team of criminals masquerading as heroes, who are terrified at the prospect of fighting Asgardians. Osborn issues a final ultimatum. If they fight for him today, their criminal records will be wiped clean and they can walk away free. The villains accept the deal and the siege begins. Ares, the god of war, stands before Osborn's assembled army of villains and recruits, delivering a rousing battle cry. He calls them true warriors, promising that today they face a tested, worthy foe and that the eyes of the entire world will be watching them make history. Meanwhile, miles away at the White House, the President of the United States is furious. He desperately tries to reach Osborn by phone, but Victoria Hand stonewalls him, flat out ignoring the President's direct orders to stand down and his frantic warnings that Osborn has completely lost his mind. The battle lines are drawn. Up in Asgard, floating peacefully above Broxton, Oklahoma, Loki shakes a resting Balder awake. He brings a chilling warning. Mortal forces are coming to take their revenge for Volstagg's blunder. Down in the streets of Broxton, news crews are already scrambling, pointing their cameras at the sky to capture the impending bloodbath, and then the assault begins. The Sentry rockets through the air like a missile, crashing straight into Asgard's ancient walls in a massive explosion caught live on camera. Norman Osborn, wearing the Iron Patriot armor, leads a terrifying aerial armada of fighter jets and his Dark Avengers directly into the mythological city. Ares drops straight into the fray, immediately crossing blades with the Asgardian defender Fandral, who quickly realizes the dark rumors are true. The god of war is just as mad as his father. The shockwaves from the attack rock a small, quiet room down in Broxton, where Tony Stark is recovering. Maria Hill sees Osborn's forces attacking Asgard and immediately tells Blake they need to evacuate Tony Stark quietly. But Blake has another plan. Instead of running, he steps outside into the chaos. He raises his wooden walking stick toward the swarming fighter jets above and calls down a massive, blinding strike of lightning. Thor is back. Fully transformed and absolutely enraged by the invasion of his home, the Thunder God descends from the storm clouds, flying straight for Osborn's forces. Osborn tries to keep his terrified troops calm, but before Thor can even land a blow, he is completely blindsided. A surprise energy attack blasts him out of the sky mid-air, and the Sentry violently tackles him into the dirt, cratering the ground. Seeing the Avengers' heaviest hitter pinned down, Osborn seizes the moment. He orders his entire squad of villains to unleash everything they have at full throttle. Thor is instantly engulfed in a catastrophic nuclear-sized explosion, leaving the horrified news reporters watching from afar to realize one chilling truth. Osborn's team is trying to kill a god. Emerging from the rubble, a battered Thor struggles to his feet, growling, "You dare!" at his attackers. Norman Osborn coldly replies, "I do," and blasts the Thunder God point blank with a devastating energy beam. As Osborn's villains close in on the fallen hero, the brutal scene is broadcast live across the globe. News anchors report in shock that the unprovoked siege is supposedly retaliation for the Chicago incident, confirming to a stunned world that the mighty Thor has officially been taken down. But the broadcast is being watched deep inside an undisclosed Avengers hideout, and we see Steve Rogers glares at the television screen, his fists clenched in furious determination, ready to finally bring the fight to Osborn. The chaos of the siege rages on, but for Ares, the true battle becomes one of shattering revelation. The god of war violently clashes blades with Balder, demanding to know why Loki's madness was allowed to drag Asgard into ruin. But Balder delivers a crushing blow of truth. Loki is not the king. Balder is. The shock registers on Ares' bloodied face, his eyes wide behind his golden helm, as the all-seeing Heimdall confirms the grim reality. Heimdall's solemn words cut deeper than any blade. Ares has not protected Asgard. He has brought war to its doorstep, manipulated by the lies of a mortal. The horrific realization sets in, and Ares whispers a single, rage-filled word: Osborne. Down on the scorched earth of Broxton, Norman Osborn stands victorious. Clad in the Iron Patriot armor, he plants his metal boot firmly onto the bleeding head of the defeated Thor. With news cameras broadcasting live to a stunned world, Osborn smugly declares Asgard under his jurisdiction, ordering the Thunder God not to get up. But his moment of absolute triumph is violently interrupted. A deafening explosion rocks the battlefield as a rusted pickup truck bursts through the smoke. A young man hangs out the passenger window firing a rocket launcher, while former SHIELD Commander Maria Hill stands in the back, unleashing a relentless, deafening storm of heavy machine gun fire. The hail of bullets forces Osborn's heavy hitters to scatter. Leaping from the truck, she rushes to the battered Thunder God. "I'm a friend of Tony Stark," she tells him urgently. Working together, they haul Thor's massive frame into the back of the truck, flooring the gas pedal and speeding away into the dust. The live broadcast of this absolute massacre reaches a shadowy hideout in Brooklyn. Steve Rogers stands bathed in the glow of the television screen, his face hardened with unyielding disgust. He turns away from the footage, delivering a quiet but earth-shattering speech. He refuses to watch a madman march troops into battle for reasons he can't even justify. He tells the room that this kind of unchecked tyranny is exactly what made him want to be Captain America in the first place. As he calls for anyone willing to stand up and be counted, the shadows recede to reveal a massive, heavily armed assembly of the true Avengers. Spider-Man, Luke Cage, Ms. Marvel, Nick Fury, Spider-Woman, and dozens more. They stand in silence, hanging on his every word. The time for hiding is officially over. Back in the burning ruins of Asgard, the sky is torn open by the raw fury of the god of war. Ares hurtles down like a meteor, screaming Osborn's name as he crashes directly into the Iron Patriot. Gripping his massive weapons, Ares vows to pull Osborn's head from his shoulders, armor and all, for the betrayal. Osborn doesn't even flinch. "Sorry to hear you say that," he replies coldly. Before Ares can swing his blade, a blur of golden light obliterates him. The sentry hits Ares with the force of a speeding missile, driving a brutal punch into the war god's face and smashing him violently through the heavy stone rooftops of Asgard. Bleeding but unbowed, Ares climbs from the rubble, gripping his axe. He glares up at his attacker, disappointed. "Sentry, I expected more of you," Ares growls. "I thought us friends." The sentry stands motionless on the ledge above, his eyes glowing with terrifying, unrestrained power. He simply replies, "My mistake." Sentry drives a vicious, high-speed punch into the god of war's armored face. The brutality intensifies immediately afterward as Ares drives his axe deep into the sentry's back, tearing through flesh as a golden trail of energy erupts from the wound, accompanied by a blood-curdling roar of agony. In the skies above, military aircraft scramble through thick plumes of smoke while distant energy blasts shatter Asgardian stonework. Amidst the falling debris, Balder watches in stunned horror as Ares surges forward. Emboldened by blind rage, the god of war leaps into the air with a primal battle cry. Then, the unthinkable happens in a flash of unbridled horror. Pushed past his absolute limit, the sentry's dark persona takes total control. With terrifying, godlike strength, he grips Ares by the torso and literally rips the god of war in half, unleashing a horrific explosion of blood, muscle, and entrails. Across the battlefield, from horrified heroes and villains to stunned civilians and live news crews, everyone freezes in absolute trauma, watching the impossible unfold. Shifting to the secure shadows of the Avengers' hideout in Brooklyn, the gravity of the crisis settles over the T. Steve Rogers stands alongside Bucky Barnes, Spider-Man, Luke Cage, and Nick Fury in front of a massive aircraft. Steve firmly insists that Bucky take the mantle and the shield, declaring that it is time to step up and take their country back, while Jarvis arrives with crucial intelligence and a final encouraging word. Before heading into the assault, Nick Fury benches 10-year-old Alexander, the young god of fear. Alex tries to flex his god powers to prove he's ready, but Fury doesn't flinch. He orders the kid to power down and stay behind, reminding him that this isn't a training exercise, it's a war against immortals. Steve Rogers and his newly assembled alliance of Avengers, Young Avengers and Secret Warriors, board a high-tech shield transport. When Wiccan questions how they'll reach Oklahoma in time, Daisy Johnson opens up a wormhole portal, warping the entire team instantly across the country. Meanwhile, at Broxton, Oklahoma, Norman Osborn orders total martial law to contain the chaos. Draken leads ground recon through the streets, tracking down the battered Thor. Just as Hammer troops move in, a massive crack of lightning shatters the sky, signaling the Thunder God is ready for round two. In the wreckage below, a battered, bloodied Thor rises to his knees, clutching Mjolnir. With defiant fury burning in his eyes, he vows to defend his home and his father's legacy to his very last breath. Standing nearby, Norman Osborn, clad in his Iron Patriot armor, alongside the Sentry and Ms. Marvel, look down at the defiant Thunder God, completely unaware of the ambush until Taskmaster suddenly broadcasts a frantic warning over the comms telling Osborn to turn around. Norman Osborn's helmet visor shifts, reflecting a chilling sight. The distinct concentric circles and star of Captain America's shield locked squarely onto him as the cavalry arrives, setting the stage for an explosive collision. Back in Washington, D.C., the situation has officially spun completely out of control. Inside the White House war room, the president receives an urgent, shocking update. Norman Osborn has completely ignored direct orders and mobilized the entirety of the initiative into a full-scale, unsanctioned military assault on Asgard. With the government's hand forced, the president doesn't hesitate. He gives the definitive order to mobilize all available military forces under General Stewart and officially slap Norman Osborn and his entire team with charges of treason. But on the ground in Asgard, legal orders from Washington mean nothing compared to raw, apocalyptic violence. The Sentry, Norman Osborn's ultimate terrifying weapon, has crossed a line from which there is no return. With his dark void persona fully in control, the Sentry looks at the immortal pantheon and coldly asks the chilling question, how many gods will I have to kill today? Even the god of thunder, Thor, is left bloodied and reeling as he faces a being with literally no limits to his power set. Just when it looks like Asgard is going to be burned to ash, the impossible happens. Captain America has returned, and he didn't come alone. Slinging his iconic shield straight into the Iron Patriot armor with a deafening clang, Cap leads a massive wave of underground Avengers and heroes in training, crashing directly through Hammer's front lines. Taskmaster tries frantically to warn Osborn over the comms, but it's already too late. As if the battlefield wasn't chaotic enough, Parker Robbins, the Hood, makes his grand entrance alongside his entire criminal syndicate and gang of villains, bringing together every thug, mercenary, and supervillain he commands. The Hood inserts himself right into the war, proving that when the world burns, the underworld intends to carve out its own piece of the ashes. Meanwhile, down in the ruined streets of Broxton, Oklahoma, Speed races through the chaos with a crucial briefcase while Maria Hill tracks down a hidden location. Bursting inside, she finds a battered, unconscious Tony Stark lying helpless on a table, desperately trying to wake him up as enemy forces close in. The walls are closing in, the heavy hitters are clashing, and the siege has just reached its absolute breaking point. High above the war-torn skies of Asgard, Hammer's airships take devastating hits as massive explosions rip through the fleet. Victoria Hand desperately screams into her communicator, ordering all hands to abandon ship immediately. Down on the battlefield, Thor channels the absolute limit of his celestial fury, launching himself at the Sentry with a deafening blast of lightning and warning him that he has chosen the wrong master and the wrong battlefield. But the brutal strike shatters the surface, exposing the horrific, monstrous red tendrils of the void beginning to erupt from within. On the ground, Norman Osborn fires wild repulsor blasts from his Iron Patriot armor, screaming that everyone is under arrest and guilty of treason. But a remote system override initiated by Tony Stark triggers a critical failure, corrupting the armor's databases and power cells. Captain America steps forward and brings his shield down in a crushing blow that shatters Osborn's faceplate to pieces. With systems failing and the battle reaching its absolute breaking point, the catastrophic damage triggers the unthinkable. The entire floating city of Asgard begins to tear apart and collapse from the sky, crashing down toward the earth in a monumental catastrophe. Standing on a crumbling precipice, Thor gazes out at the ruins of his ancestral home and cries out for his father. Stripped of his armor, a sweating, manic Norman Osborn loses his mind, screaming in terror that nobody understands what they have unleashed. As news cameras broadcast the horror to the world, Spider-Man silences Osborn with a brutal punch to the jaw, telling him to shut up. When Thor demands to know what happened to Loki, a terrified Osborn babbles incoherently, insisting that he was the only one who could control the monster, and that everyone is dead. And then, floating in the apocalyptic aftermath, The void sits in horrifying, meditative repose, surrounded by writhing red tendrils of pure darkness and absolute destruction. Below, Thor, Vision, Spider-Man, Luke Cage, and Spider-Woman stare up at the monster in horror. Loki reaches for the scattered, glowing stones of Norn, pleading to Odin for one final chance to save his home. Channeling Loki's spell, the Avengers surge forward, supercharged with divine energy. Cap declares that they are getting a second chance, Iron Man agrees, and Luke Cage notes that a second chance is all Thor needs. The empowered heroes launch a relentless assault. Thor hurls Mjolnir through the dark sky, striking the void with a beam of light. Iron Man rockets into the fray with full battery power, shouting for the team to hit the monster from every direction. Captain America's shield spins through the air, slicing into the void's face, while Luke Cage stands tall in a rainbow aura, rallying the troops. Nearby, the Hood's gang realizes in disbelief that Loki stripped away their magic and gave it directly to the Avengers. The Void growls in anger, complaining that the heroes aren't playing fair and that this is a trick. Cap's shield slices deep through the entity's dark mass, and Thor flies downward through crackling lightning, shouting for the demon to feel the power of his ancestors. Thor brings down a thunderous bolt of lightning that shatters the sky with a massive crack-a-boom. Yet as the smoke clears, Spider-Man, Luke Cage, and Ms. Marvel watch in dread as the monster remains standing. Emerging unscathed, the Void taunts that this power isn't a trick, but mischief. Below, Loki kneels on the ground, continuing to channel the Norn stones, while Thor flies overhead with Mjolnir raised, shouting his brother's name. Loki stands and lifts a glowing Norn stone high into the air, screaming at the monster that it will pay for what it has done. The Void dismisses his magic and violently thrusts its dark, razor-sharp tendrils directly through Loki's body with a brutal Iron Man and Thor cry out in terror as the tendrils impale and tear Loki apart. In a close-up of his face inside his horned helmet, Loki looks toward Thor with blacked-out eyes and whispers his final words, "I'm sorry, brother." A blinding, white-hot explosion consumes Loki, completely vaporizing his silhouette. Thor stares in wide-eyed, helpless shock as his brother is obliterated into ash and light. With Loki gone, the magic fades, and Spider-Man realizes their power upgrade is over. Cap orders everyone back on their feet as the Void looms massive and terrifying in the sky. Driven by pure grief and fury, Thor screams that the monster has attacked the House of Odin, calling down a massive, destructive lightning strike across the ruins. Among the rubble, Captain America grabs Norman Osborn by his shirt, pulling him up and demanding to know how to stop the beast. A green-tinted, wild-eyed Osborn gasps that he only ever sympathized with it, trembling as he calls the Void the Angel of Death and insisting that it cannot be stopped. Overhead, Ms. Marvel and Iron Man call out to Thor, asking if he can draw the monster away from the city. In the final panel, Thor stands resolutely at the center of a swirling inferno of fire and lightning. High above the battlefield, a massive Hammer helicarrier is torn apart by explosions and electrical arcs. Iron Man streaks across the sky, overriding the vessel's control systems and contacting Victoria Hand to demand if anyone remains on board. Hand confirms evacuation is underway, but Stark coldly warns her that he is converting the entire helicarrier into a giant bullet, giving her 10 seconds to clear out. Hand screams in sheer panic as explosions rock the corridors, barely escaping as Stark pitches the burning multi-ton warship straight down into a kamikaze dive toward the Earth. The helicarrier slams into the ground, detonating in a colossal, nuclear-scale pillar of white flame and energy that tears into the stratosphere. Massive shockwaves ripple across the horizon, sending blinding light and debris sweeping across the battlefield, while Asgardian warriors watch the cataclysm from the cliffs above. Captain America shields his allies from the scorching blast wave as heroes are thrown through the air. Amidst the blinding smoke, a frantic, dirt-streaked Norman Osborn attempts to flee on foot. Volstagg slams a heavy boot onto the fallen Osborn, declaring that everyone answers for their sins today. Battered and bloodied, Thor walks over carrying Mjolnir as Iron Man lands beside him. Smoke clears to reveal a massive, smoldering crater carved deep into the earth. The Avengers march together to the center of the crater where they find a naked, bruised, and weeping Robert Reynolds sitting in the dirt, asking in disoriented horror, Did I do this?" Towering over him in shadow, Iron Man answers, "Yes, Bob." Broken and weeping, Bob crawls on his knees, begging the heroes to kill him. Thor coldly refuses. As tears stream down Bob's face, Thor sternly declares that he will live to face penance for his crimes, for the murder of Loki, the fall of Asgard, and the betrayal of the Avengers. But as Thor speaks, the darkness inside Bob resurfaces, his eyes turning pitch black as he sinisterly whispers, "You're not listening to me!" The Void erupts back out of Bob's body with terrifying force, forming a massive, red-eyed, tentacled nightmare that throws the heroes backward while screaming, "Kill me!" Thor immediately leaps into the air, calling down an apocalyptic bolt of lightning and driving Mjolnir straight into the heart of the shadowy monster. The celestial strike incinerates the entity, leaving only a blackened, charred skeleton smoldering in the dirt. Iron Man and Luke Cage watch as Thor kneels down, solemnly wrapping the remains of Robert Reynolds inside his own red cape. Thor gathers the bundle and takes flight over the city, declaring to Spider-Man and the gathered heroes, "I will return." Breaching Earth's atmosphere, Thor streaks through space, carrying the cape-wrapped body past Mars and the Moon. Reaching the roaring surface of the sun, Thor hurls the remains straight into the solar inferno. The cape and bones incinerate into ash within the blinding heat, leaving Thor watching in silent resolve as the Sentry and the Void are erased forever.